Hi, this is David Screek, and this is Stock Chart of the Day for August 6th. So we'll get right into it here. So we did Amazon yesterday, so today we're going to do Apple. Of course, Apple kind of had the opposite of Amazon, where Amazon was up almost 10%. Apple was down 5% or 10, over 9 points. And what happened was they showed a really slowing in their iPhone business, and the danger that Apple has right now, and we know that Apple has become I think anyone can tell you that probably the biggest mistake they ever made was not buying Apple 20 years ago. And I kind of got on the Apple trend early. I bought the first iPhone. I was really big into iPods. I love music, so I really got big into iPods and like 03, 04 when they got introduced. I got into MacBooks. Ironically, now I still have a MacBook and an iPad. I actually hate iPhones. No offense. I know most of you probably use one, but I'm totally on Android. And I hate Apple security. Just to tell you a little funny story here, with Apple. So I recently I got a gift for my birthday from one of my family members here as a new a new MacBook, right? And anyhow, because my birthday's next month, and I won't be around here next month. So anyhow, I was trying to get back onto my iTunes because I had purchased like 1,000 songs in iTunes way back when, and it's an old email address associated with it, and I did all the security stuff, confirm, blah 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 blah, and then I get a message from Apple. Oh, we will have to confirm with you within 24 hours if this. I'm like, you know, MFers. I spent thousands of dollars purchasing all these movies and songs years ago, before everything went kind of like streaming, and now you won't let me access my account even after I went through all the security stuff. So I'm not a huge fan of Apple. And if you lose your phone or your password or whatever, like, it's much easier dealing with Android. So I wish actually Android would come up with a half decent computer, and tablets, like the Samsung tablets, are pretty, rudimentary, pretty average. So anyhow, there's my little story. I hope I didn't bore you too much, but Apple. One thing about Apple too, what's always interesting with that long-term Apple chart is that people always talk about how much money they could have made, but one thing that no one ever talks about is that from the late '80s to like 2003, Apple was dead money, and actually anyone who would have bought it in their late '80s to early '90s would have lost about 50%. So that's always what's kind of interesting, is that it's always nice to say, oh man, the last 20 years, you would have made, hundreds of times on your money in Apple. But the fact of the matter is, if you had bought Apple at its IPO, you didn't make very much in the first 20 years. So, and how many people really hold something for 40 years, And I would say that most people who started buying Apple probably did it pre-financial crisis, or 10, 15 years ago. So they still have done very well. But, I'm just trying to say that, and then everyone has its day. And what worries me about Apple is we go back to BlackBerry. And by the way, BlackBerry, if I highly recommend the BlackBerry movie. You can buy it on YouTube. It's about the rise and fall of BlackBerry. And BlackBerry, obviously, was just basically a phone company, a headset company. And then Apple and Samsung and all these, and anything that Huawei, anything Android or iOS based, began taking market share from them. They didn't catch up, and then the stock collapsed, and now the company is basically more of a software company than they are a hardware company. They don't even make phones anymore, right? So that's kind of a lesson. I think one fear you have with Apple, even though Apple has other streams of revenue, they do have like an Apple TV service, but they probably lose money on that, just like Amazon loses money on the Amazon Prime Video streaming service. But is that there's such a one-trick pony now. Like I said, I have a MacBook, an iPad, but really most younger people, millennials who drive this, and who drive the sales of these kind of companies, they're just on phones. And because the phones have gotten so good, like for example, I told you I'm a Samsung guy, and I have the Note, and I just bought an old Note for like $200-300. I didn't buy the newest one. These phones are so good now, you don't have to go out and buy the newest one, and the newest ones have very little upgrades to them, etc. So I think that's where Apple's in real danger here. And of course, The market cap of the company is gigantic. They're 2.8 trillion. Let's go quickly look at their financials here. They're 2.8 trillion on 400 billion roughly in revenue. They're trading at 7 times revenues. And you can see that this year the revenues, that's last year. This is the estimate for this year. This year's revenues are expected to be down. So how can you justify a company trading at 7? If you're trading at 7 times revenues, you have to be growing. So I don't think you can justify a company trading at that kind of, revenue, price to revenue. And, the price to earnings is pretty heady there at 30. They don't really pay a dividend. So I really think that, you could see Apple. Now, I don't think they're going to go away the BlackBerry, but they could definitely, be not the dominant player anymore, and not the stock that everyone just think is going to go up year after year. Because sometimes that ends. Remember, IBM was a tech company like that back in the 70s, right? And let's go look at a long-term chart of IBM. IBM was the company in the 60s and 70s. You can see after a huge run in the 90s, IBM has basically done nothing for 10 years. It's gone basically sideways here, now for years and years. And IBM is kind of known as this, and the only thing that's kind of driven it recently is kind of this AI boom, right? So, you can see even since 98, if you had bought the top in IBM, you've only doubled your money. Like gold since 98 is up 7 times its value, right? So that's kind of what could happen. This is kind of more what I expect would happen to Apple rather than BlackBerry, that it would just kind of stall out, not be a growth company anymore, and start to underperform. So you can see they're trying to get into AI, et cetera, et cetera. But really, that headset business, or whatever you want to call it, the phone business, is a driver. And if Apple does kind of not see that, it does not really diversify and find other avenues of growth, and it's going to be tough for a $400 billion revenue company and $2.8 trillion market cap company to find growth. So then one of our sponsor companies, well, this is a soon to be sponsor. I've done consulting and marketing with them in the past. I'm going to get another consulting deal with them. And I've talked about, they're doing a private placement. I'm participating in it. I've helped raise some money for them. The stock is starting to firm up here. It's now 10 to 11. The private placement's at 8.5 with a full warrant, by the way, at 15 cents. Good for 3 years. So anyhow, this is Carlyle Resources. Unfortunately, they're not on stock charts, so I have to do it here on Apple. But they have a property. Apple. I have to do it here on I got Apple on my on Yahoo. But you can see the 6-month chart. After falling from 30 cents to 10, like all juniors have fallen, it started, I really have been picking away a lot. I've been buying a lot of this stock since about mid-June, and you can see it, kind of basing here, coming up. I would say the first area of resistance is that 12 cents, and then about around 15, 16. And if it can break that, it's they're only raising about $1 million down here. It's a small market cap, 2.8 million. They have a property they've already begun to drill and have had some excellent results from in British Columbia. I think, this thing could do very, very well. So this is my largest junior holding right now. Like I said, I'm participating in it. The reason I'm kind of aggressively marketing with them is because I like it so much. This may be the last private placement I do all year, because obviously the junior mining sector is kind of dead. And it's really the only company on my radar right now that I love enough, and that's raising money to really participate with right now. So if you're interested in it, again, you have to be a accredited investor. They changed the terms. Initially, it was a half warrant. Now it's a full warrant. So and like I said, I own it, and they're going to get on my stock chart of the day marketing service as well. And we'll probably, my friend Mike Swanson and I will probably market them again in the coming months, because I like the deal so much. Anyhow, so today's stock chart today was Apple, the slowdowns in their sales, and the overvaluation of the kind of stock. So and the fact that I feel that maybe the hyper growth era for Apple may be over.